He didn't speak, didn't beg, didn't even resist when the guards dragged him across the sidewalk like garbage. To most of DC, he was just another homeless old man cluttering up a cafe entrance. Another face to avoid. Another story nobody wanted to hear. But when that black SUV screeched to a stop, when those men in suits jumped out, when they called him Hawkeye in voices tight with urgency, everything stopped. Because if he was nobody, why did the CIA just risk exposure to get him back? The morning had started like any other in Washington. Government aides rushing with lattes clutched like lifelines. Tourists stopping for selfies with cherry blossoms. Black sedans cutting through. Intersections like predators. And on the corner of M Street and 19th, right across from Metro Grind, that overpriced coffee shop where congressional staffers pretend they're important, sat a man nobody saw until they decided he was in there. Wait, nobody knew his name. Nobody cared to ask. Just another weathered face under the hood of an army jacket that had seen better days. His cardboard sign was different, though. No sob stories, no God bless. Just 7 words, no handouts. Just coffee, if you're kind. Most walked past. A few, the ones whose parents raised them right, dropped coins without making eye contact. Some muttered things they'd never say if their mothers were listening. One woman in a Navy power suit, the kind with shoulder pads that scream, "I'm the boss," rolled her eyes and whispered to her assistant loud enough to be heard, "If you're going to be homeless, at least go where you're not an eyesore." The man didn't flinch, not even a blink, just sat still as stone, scribbling something in this small notebook. The kind soldiers carry, the kind where you write things that matter. His beard was trimmed with the same precision you see in men who never quite leave the military behind. His boots, cracked and worn at the heels, were still laced in that perfect crisscross-only drill sergeants appreciate. And his eyes, damn, those eyes didn't belong to someone who'd given up. They were sharp, watching, recording everything. Inside Metro Grind, the manager, 30-something with a haircut that cost more than most people's. Electric bills, scowled through the plate glass like he was looking at a rat instead of a human being. "I told you to move him yesterday," she snapped at the security guard, this ex-football type, with biceps straining his polyester uniform. "We've got federal contractors coming in for breakfast. This looks bad." The guard nodded, squared his shoulders, and stepped outside like he was walking into battle, instead of confronting an old man who probably weighed 140 pounds, soaking wet. "Hey, time to move, old man. You're making the place look bad." The homeless man didn't speak, didn't stand, just stared at the steam rising from the cafe's rooftop vent, eyes tracking it like he was calculating wind direction. The guard, not used to being ignored, grabbed his shoulder. "I said move." And that's when it happened. So fast you'd miss it if you blinked. The old man's hand came up, caught the guard's wrist and twisted, not to hurt, just to break contact. His body shifted, weight redistributed, balance maintained. Not fighting, just redirecting like water around a stone. The guard staggered back, face flushed with surprise and something else. Embarrassment, maybe. Or recognition. "You touch me again," the old man said quietly, voice like gravel under tires, "and you'll find out exactly how much I've forgotten." A customer stepped out, phone already filming because that's what people do now. Don't help. Just record. "Get this guy out of here," the manager barked from the doorway. "We're calling DCPD." Nobody noticed the black SUV that had been idling across the street for nearly 10 minutes. Nobody saw the federal plates or the men inside, watching with the kind of stillness that comes from professional patience. Nobody noticed until the engine cut off. The cafe crowd had gathered to watch the confrontation. That strange hunger people get for other people's trouble. They didn't see the SUV's door open until it was too late. 2 men stepped out. Not regular feds. Not the kind that hand out business cards and file reports. These guys wore suits built for movement. No flashy sunglasses. No badges on display. Just flat stairs, earpieces, and the kind of shoes that let you run when running matters. One of them, tall, with a face that had seen too many bad endings, called out, "Hawkeye, it's time. You know how a room feels when all the air gets sucked out at once." That's what happened. Every conversation stopped mid-word. The guard froze with his phone halfway to his ear. Even the customer filming lowered his phone, like he'd just realized he was witnessing something he shouldn't. The homeless man looked up slowly, something shifting in his posture, like watching ice crack on a frozen river. "No one's called me that. In 10 years, the taller agent stepped forward, voice low but sharp with urgency. "We don't have time. The package has moved, and Mason's not working alone anymore." The old man, now visibly alert, tucked the notebook into his jacket with hands that suddenly seemed steadier, younger. "Where?" "Langley. Briefing in 30. Vehicles ready." A kid at a nearby table, maybe 8 with a chocolate milk mustache, tugged his mom's sleeve. "Is that guy in the CIA?" The mom pulled him close, unsure whether to leave or stay. The security guard stood dumbfounded as the old man rose to his full height, taller than he'd looked hunched on the sidewalk. His posture straightened, shoulders squaring, chin lifting. "Military, no question about it. Tell Metro Grind they need a better perimeter," he said. Voice dropped an octave, all pretense of weakness gone. 2 entry points, 0 cameras on there. "Blindside." He walked past the stunned manager toward the SUV. "Coffee's on me next time," he added, not looking back. As the vehicle pulled away, people stared with open confusion. Some recorded, some just watched. Some would tell this story later, exaggerating parts, forgetting others. But they'd all remember the moment they realized that the man they'd stepped over, around, away from, wasn't just some old drifter. And if the CIA was calling him back by a name that sounded like something from a spy novel, something serious was about to go down. The ride to Langley was quiet. Not awkward quiet, operational quiet. Just the steady beat of tires on asphalt and the faint buzz of encrypted radio chatter. Nobody spoke. Even the agent in the passenger seat, the one who'd barked orders back at the cafe, kept his eyes forward, like making eye contact with Hawkeye might burn. Inside the SUV, the man who minutes before had been dismissed as homeless sat with a stillness that comes from decades of discipline. His eyes weren't darting nervously like someone unused to government. Corridors. They scanned methodically. Rearview mirror, reflections in passing windows, blind spots in alleyways, all of it. "Still doing sweeps," the driver muttered to his partner, voice low but not low enough. "He never stopped," the other replied. The SUV turned through a side entrance at Langley, not the tourist entrance with the big sign and the security theatre. This was the entrance for the people who don't exist on paper. They didn't check his ID. They didn't need to. His retina scan was still in the system, preserved like a museum piece nobody could bring themselves to throw away. Doors buzzed open with no word spoken. Elevators moved to floors not listed on the buttons. He walked with the quiet pace of someone who already knew the building better than most of the agents working there now. At the end of a narrow hallway with no windows, a familiar face waited. Director Elaine Monroe. She was older now, grey streaking, through black hair that used to be her pride. New lines around eyes that had seen too many secrets, a tension in her shoulders that wasn't there the last time they'd spoken. But her eyes hadn't changed, still sharp, still watching everything. "Hawkeye," she said, voice controlled, like she was afraid of what might slip out if she loosened her grip. "You look like hell." "I was in hell," he replied, "until someone decided they wanted me back." She didn't smile, didn't flinch, just opened the door behind her like they were picking up a conversation they'd paused 10 minutes ago instead of 10. Years, inside, screens everywhere, maps with red dots blinking, surveillance footage cycling through foreign streets, and one name, flashing blood red in the center of the main board. Raven. Hawkeye's expression froze, his jaw tightened like Someone had just tightened a vise, but his voice stayed level, controlled. "He's alive." "Yes," Monroe answered. "And worse, he's active. We didn't believe it at first. He buried everything so deep. We only saw the surface. But 2 weeks ago, an intercepted comm gave us a signature match. Audio fingerprint, syntax, patterns, linguistic markers. It's him." Hawkeye didn't sit. "He didn't need to. I tried to warn them," he said. "Before I vanished, I told Langston, I told Faber. Raven wasn't who they thought he was. They thought you broke. They were wrong." Monroe nodded. "We know that now." She stepped aside, giving him a clear view of the room-sized display. Raven's network laid bare. Global routes, shell companies, embassy contacts. Dots connected by glowing lines, forming a web that spanned continents. And under all of it, buried beneath layers of plausible deniability and redacted files, was one silent truth: betrayal from within. "He's turned," Monroe said. "Fully, no question. He's building something, recruiting, laundering, aligning assets, with a specific timestamp." Hawkeye stared at the timeline, his eyes fixed on a red box blinking near the bottom right. 72 hours. "What's the target?" he asked. "We don't know yet, but we think he's coming back stateside. Something big, something that needs the kind of silence only deep surveillance can offer." Silence fell between them, not the awkward kind, but the heavy kind that comes when two people who've seen too much recognize what's at stake. Then Hawkeye spoke, not with fear, but with purpose. "Then you brought back the right ghost." 30 years ago, the CIA had recruited a man known only as Raven. Back then, no one questioned the decision. Hell, they were practically giddy about it. He was brilliant, a linguistic savant who could drop into Moscow and be mistaken for a local. Within hours, a tech genius who could crack systems considered unbreakable. An interrogator who never needed to raise his voice to empty a subject's mind like a tipped bucket. Raven was the kind of operative you only deployed when failure wasn't an option, when even the shadows felt too exposed. But what no one realized, except Hawkeye, was that Raven had ambitions that went beyond intelligence gathering. He was building something beneath every operation, embedding commands in systems, rerouting data, making allies in places no file would ever document. And then came Belarus. Hawkeye had been sent in as Overwatch during what should have been a routine extraction. Just eyes in the sky, nothing fancy, until he intercepted a private communication Raven had no business sending. The message was encrypted, layered, invisible to standard monitoring, but not to Hawkeye. What he heard in that transmission was enough to shatter everything. Raven was building a rogue operation from within, one that not even the agency could trace. Not yet. When Hawkeye reported it, they shut down the comm channel, ran diagnostics. By morning, Raven had an alibi solid as concrete. Files were clean, logs showed nothing, everything locked down tight. And then they turned on Hawkeye. Nobody said it out loud. They were too smart for that. But the psych evaluations, the reassignments, the sidelong glances, the message was crystal clear. Stop digging. He refused. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. Not because he was guilty, but because he knew he wouldn't survive if he stayed. They wouldn't put a bullet in his head. Too messy, too obvious. But accidents happen. Orders get lost. Missions go sideways in ways no one can predict. So he went. Dark, changed his name, dropped out of every system, grew a beard, took to the streets not to hide, but to watch. Because that's what Hawkeye did. He watched, and now Raven was back. In the operations room, Monroe brought up a satellite feed. This is Raven's last confirmed location, industrial corridor outside Mogadishu, 2 weeks ago. The footage played in grainy monochrome. A man in a light suit crossing between shipping containers. Raven, same build, same distinctive gait. Older, maybe slower, but only on the surface. He was coordinating something with local mercenaries, surveillance packages, satellite overrides, but, more alarming, the presence of American tech, restricted American tech. "He's got help on this side," Hawkeye said flatly. Monroe nodded. "We think he's flipped at least 2 defense contractors, maybe more. And there's a pattern to his shipments. They're all heading toward DC. When's the next window?" "Tonight. Rail transfer through a civilian freight corridor. No customs checks, no security scans. Raven's moving something he doesn't want seen." Hawkeye stared at the route map, eyes narrowing slightly. "And you want me to intercept it?" Monroe met his gaze. "We need someone who doesn't exist on paper, someone Raven won't anticipate. He thinks you're dead. Then let's prove him wrong." As Monroe stepped away to prep the intercept team, Hawkeye stood alone for a moment, staring at the glowing map with eyes that had seen too many missions go wrong. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about unfinished business. The cold bit into Hawkeye's face as he stepped out of the unmarked SUV, not the damp chill of a homeless man with nowhere to go, but the sharp, focus-bringing cold of an operator back in the field. He was dressed differently now, combat boots that moved, silent on gravel, tactical cargos with concealed pockets, dark fleece jacket with no insignia. Not the rags of a forgotten man, but the armor of someone dangerous again. The freight yard stretched ahead like a metal forest, steel containers stacked like tombstones, shadows bleeding between floodlights, the distant echo of machinery that could mask a gunshot. "Clock's ticking," Monroe said quietly through his earpiece. "Raven's package is en route. You've got less than 9 minutes." Hawkeye moved like a man who'd never forgotten how, controlled, fluid, silent, every step precise. Every breath measured. The old instincts hadn't faded. They'd just been waiting like old friends. Up ahead he spotted them, 3 men, civilian clothes trying too hard to look casual, earpieces poorly concealed, military posture they couldn't hide if they tried. Contractors, hired guns who thought the dark made them invisible, and behind them a black shipping container marked with a red stencil, YR 67. The same code Hawkeye had seen years ago in Belarus. The hair on the back of his neck stood up like a warning. This was it. He moved like water through shadows. First target, taken down with a silent hold, a hard drop behind a stack of crates. Second, flanked from the blind side, disarmed, dropped, without a sound. The third spun around too slow by half. By the time he raised his weapon, Hawkeye had already drawn his suppressed sidearm. 1 round, non-lethal, straight to the shoulder. The man crumpled with a grunt, no louder than someone dropping. "Their keys. Perimeter secure," Hawkeye whispered. "Copy," Monroe replied. "Team moving in. You're clear to breach." Hawkeye approached the container, gun still raised. The biometric lock was state-of-the-art, but he didn't need to open it. He needed to see it. The side panel had been modified, just like in Raven's old playbook. A microgrid thermal disperser. The kind of tech you only use when you're hiding something dangerous enough to require masking from drones and satellites. He stepped back, scanned the perimeter once more, then heard it. A quiet click. Metal on metal. His eyes snapped up. A man stood 20 yards away, half hidden in shadow, hands in his pockets, trench coat flapping in the wind like a damn movie villain. Even in the dim light, Hawkeye knew Raven. "You're supposed to be dead," Raven called out, voice still carrying that slight accent he could never quite shake. "So were you," Hawkeye replied, calm as still water. They stared at each other across the darkness, 2 phantoms from a war no one else remembered, 2 ghosts the world had tried to erase. "I warned you not to dig," Raven said, stepping closer. "You could have lived out your years as some invisible relic, but you just couldn't let it go, and you couldn't stop selling out your country." Raven laughed, a bitter sound that hung in the cold air. "Country. There is no country anymore, Hawk. Just contracts and chaos. The ones who win are the ones who understand that. You always were good at rationalizing treason. Funny, coming from the guy who vanished. I vanished because I believed we could still fix it, Hawkeye said. And I'm here now because I know we can stop you. Raven's face shifted, subtle, calculating. Like a chess player seeing 3 moves ahead. You're not here to stop me, he said. You're here because they begged you, because they finally realized I was right. The system is rotting from inside, Hawk, and I'm just the first to monetize it. Behind him, Monroe's voice crackled in Hawkeye's ear. Do not engage. We're locking his signal. Backup is 90 seconds out. Raven tilted his head. Still taking orders? After all that? I'm taking responsibility, Hawkeye said, and then he moved. Fast. Not for a gun, but for the container. He slammed the emergency override on the side panel, then used Raven's momentary distraction to dive for cover. The container hissed open and revealed not weapons, but servers. Dozens of them, each humming with stolen defense intel, contractor files, internal agency credentials. A full data warhead. Thought you'd hide your arsenal in plain sight, Hawkeye called out. But you got sloppy. Raven cursed under his breath, pulling a concealed weapon. But before he could raise it, Monroe's tactical team descended like thunder. Spotlights burst to life, turning night into harsh day. "Drop it!" barked a dozen voices at once. Raven froze, cornered, exposed, surrounded by men who wouldn't hesitate. For a long moment, he looked at Hawkeye across the distance, then dropped the weapon. "You know this isn't the end," Raven said quietly. "No," Hawkeye replied. "It's just the beginning of the reckoning." Agents swarmed in. Shackles clicked, servers secured. Raven was hauled away without ceremony, and the man once known as Hawkeye stood alone in the cold, but not forgotten anymore, just operational again. They kept him off the record, no press conferences, no medals, no official mention. But inside Langley's deepest briefing rooms, the name Hawkeye was spoken again, with a mix of reverence and caution, because what he uncovered in that shipping container was bigger than just Raven. It was a roadmap of corruption, contracts signed by shell companies, with names that traced back to people in the agency itself. Millions funneled through fake logistics firms, surveillance programs quietly redirected, operatives gone dark and now working freelance for bidders with deep pockets and shallow loyalties. Raven wasn't the end. He was the doorway. And Hawkeye had blown that door wide open. He didn't return to the streets, not because they offered him a promotion, not because he wanted a desk, but because he finally had the chance to finish what he started. Back in the black SUV, Monroe handed him a secure tablet. Congressional Committee wants a full closed briefing. Let them wait, Hawkeye said, flipping through the decrypted files. Raven's network wasn't just moving data. They were planning black site transfers. 4 U.S. citizens are marked for rendition, all under bogus warrants. Locations. 3 of them we're tracking. The 4th... Hawkeye paused, something hardening. In his eyes. She's a whistleblower. Filed a report against an energy defense merger last year. Her name's been wiped from every system. They're planning to make her disappear. Monroe stared at him. You're serious? She's our next target, Hawkeye said. We get to her before they do. Just say the word. I already did. That night, he sat alone in a quiet park overlooking the Potomac, watching as lights flickered across the D.C. skyline. The same skyline where a month ago he'd been dismissed as a nobody, a shadow on a bench. Back then, no one offered him coffee, no one remembered his name, and yet the same people who crossed the street to avoid him would never know that the man they'd called a vagrant had just stopped a coup from inside the system. Footsteps approached behind him. Jenny, the young barista from the Café. She walked up carefully, holding a paper bag and a thermos. I saw your photo on someone's screen, she said. Didn't know if it was really you, but I figured I'd take the chance. He smiled faintly. Still carrying that pepper spray? She laughed softly, handing him the bag. It's decaf this time. He opened it, coffee and a sandwich. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't say anything before, she said, that day when they dragged you out. You didn't need to, Hawkeye said. You saw. You remembered. That's more than most. Jenny hesitated, then sat beside him. Are you going to disappear again? She asked. Probably, he said. Why? Because I'm useful when I'm forgotten. They sat in silence for a long while, watching the river shimmer beneath the stars. Then Jenny reached into her coat and handed him something small, a pen, the same one she'd seen fall from his pocket when the guards dragged him out. I kept it, she said. Didn't know why. He took it gently. It's not just a pen. She raised an eyebrow. It's a key, he said, to a safety deposit box, one I left years ago. What's in it? He smiled. Proof. Then stood and walked away 1 week. Later, a Senate subcommittee opened an investigation into defense contractor irregularities. A whistleblower scheduled to testify was found under agency protection. 3 operatives from a rival PMC were indicted. The news barely covered it, just a blip. A headline that scrolled by in the ticker, but inside certain circles, especially. At Langley, there was no confusion about what had happened. Someone had drawn a line. Someone the system thought was gone. Someone who'd once been thrown out of a cafe like trash, until the CIA rolled up in a black SUV and called him by the name. They'd all tried to forget, Hawkeye. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe in giving our veterans the respect they've earned, hit that subscribe button, because we've got more stories you won't want to miss. Until next time, remember, not all heroes wear medals. Some sit quietly and wait.